intelligence. Was there another half to that?
Well, you said there were two stories in that story, but I think you covered them both, about being a Quaker.
Yeah.
But did you come to any conclusions about whether or not you benefited from being a smoke jumper? I mean, your character or your
tremendously
demeanor.
That's what I mean.
Well, how is that? You've given it some thought. So how is that?
I love my government. For that reason, if none other. They not only gave me the chance to work in a veterans mental hospital, but the smoke jumping was the highlight, of course. And it was considered the elite group among contest objectors. And I always aimed toward the top. And so when they admitted me, I felt tremendously lucky. And as a result, never having flown before, finally we were given transportation by an airplane, and it landed so smoothly. So I decided when I started making my own income, I would learn to fly. My first church was in Wheatland, Wyoming, a wonderful place. And my wife would never tell me no. I would always discuss everything with her, but she never discouraged me. And so I learned to fly from a guy by the name of Fryback. And they're in Wheatland. And I was trying to get enough hours to get a private license. Before I ever finished that, the denomination heard that they had an ordained pastor who knew how to fly. And they let me know, would I accept 5 little churches in North Dakota if they furnished the airplane? Wow! And I knew I shouldn't. I had 3 little kids, and I realized that I might do something stupid. And so I turned them down, but I couldn't get it out of my mind. And so I talked it over with my wife, and she didn't object. She just bought added insurance.
Smart woman.
A smart woman, really. And so we moved up to North Dakota, and it was a wonderful experience because I got to fly around the parish, and of course got my private license. And as a result, I've always had that in my resume. And when I finally was getting close to retirement, I was working for what was called Family Service, and they started the Retired Senior Volunteer Program in our county. And I was their first director of that and got to start it. As a result, we bought a little 5-acre farm while we lived there. My wife found that there were only 2 jobs she could get with her education that would give her a decent salary. One was as a teacher, which she'd trained for, but in her practice teaching, she found that it was almost all discipline. And she was a nonviolent Quaker. And she discovered that she would come home so upset with kids that she wasn't treating our kids fairly. And so she got, the only other job available was with the poor, welfare. And she worked with them for 20 years and was the authority in our community on the poor. Jesus' main emphasis was the poor. So I got to use my flying, and then we had this little farm, and the back pasture lent itself to a downhill short runway. And so I had a grader come in and make me a runway. And I used to love to mow that runway, believe it or not. I always used the grass for mulch. And I also built a hangar onto the big old barn that was already there. And we got my son, who had been a contractor, to build our ideal house for us.
This is in North Dakota?
No, Indiana.
Indiana, okay.
We'd moved to Indiana, and so here I had my ideal house, my own runway, my own hangar. I couldn't afford a decent sized airplane, so I got a little ultralight. The two of us went shopping one weekend, I think it was, to all the airports in the area. I found only one airplane, and it was in real good shape. It had only, I think, 6 hours on the motor. And I asked the manager, "What's that airplane worth?" Oh, he said $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. That was out of my range. But I called the guy. It turned out that the guy that had built it, an ultralight is supposed to be 51% home built, had been built by an old retired pilot. He got into running shape and had a stroke. Mm. He never got to fly his own airplane. Mm. But by the time I called him, he found it just a liability because he couldn't do anything with it. And he said he'd give it to me for the cost of the motor and the propeller. So I got an excellent little airplane for the cost of the motor, and I don't remember how much that was, maybe $1,000.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of fun just messing around, flying to our club meetings. Our flying club group were called the Wingnuts.
Well, did you ever parachute again?
No, not until the summer.
And so this summer you were how old?
90.
90, and so how'd that come to pass?
My kids came up with the idea and asked me if I would be interested. I thought about it, yeah, I would. And so the neat part about it was that when I had agreed to make the jump, my son did too, with a separate unit. And seeing him in the air with me, I think is when the picture was taken that
Oh yeah,
I showed you.
let me show this. This picture was in the Grand Junction newspaper, wasn't it?
All three of them.
Okay, this is Al making a parachute jump. Whoops, if I can get it out there. He looks a little happy when he's 90 years old. Big grin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was pretty worthwhile. It got me to thinking that we retired people figure we deserve it. The wealthy always think that. How much better could I ask for it? And I've got here just the right size of room so that I'm not going to fall very far. I can fix things up the way I want. They allow you to put all the nails in the wall you want. I'm always warm. We always complain about the food. You got to have something to complain about. But I eat out and that sort of thing. So I figure I'm one of the lazy wealthy.
Well, but you mentioned that you were the head of you were active in the a cappella choir when you were in college, and you're in a quartet, so you did a lot of singing. So when you were up in Missoula jumping with the Civilian Public Service, the conscientious objectors, did you do any singing at all?
Yes.
When did you sing?
Thank you for mentioning that. I tried to start a quartet there, and we didn't have any time, really, so we got a minimum singing in. Well, a couple of us were jumping together, so I said, let's do a duet on the way down.
I love that.
And we tried. Did you ever try talking to another parachute jumper in the midair?
You can hear pretty good, I think.
We couldn't at
Couldn't,
all.
huh? Okay.
And
Well, you can hear from the ground. You hear from the ground up under the parachute, but you can't hear across. Yeah.
And I think that's because it has the ground to bounce against.
Sure.
And but we tried and gave up pretty quickly.
So did you